Welcome back to the Ride and Laugh podcast. If you love mountain bikes, you are in the right place. Picture your last group ride. You're back at the parking lot. The Stoke's high. You're talking bikes. You're talking tech, progression. Everyone's having a good time. You love bikes. We love bikes. Let's drop in. Seiji, how are you today?
Man, I am doing so good, Danny. I mean, what a week we just had of 5 consecutive days of riding. But the best part was all the people that we met. I mean, it was just, man, it was so great. It was so great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm still rolling from that 5 days of riding. My family was out of town, and it was the holiday weekend, and certain things came together, which we will talk about on this podcast, that allowed us to ride 5 days in a row. Woo! And yeah, it was really cool. And we went a lot of different places. We met a lot of different people. And it was really cool. It was absolutely a great holiday weekend, despite the fact that it was like insufferably hot and humid here in the Northeast. But we had a cheat code, so we made the most out of it. Oh, well, we're going to talk about the previous podcast with number 20, which is, do we need advanced mountain bike features on the trail? Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of awesome comments. Our listeners are fantastic. So thank you all very much for commenting and listening and downloading. We appreciate it. And our buddy Brian on a Bike always has excellent comments.
Yes.
And he was talking about your take on what you called the floating ceiling of how far you can progress, and that kind of goes up and down with how your confidence is. And he really, really liked that. He said he really identified with that. And one of his goals as this Fort Hill jump line, which at Thunder Mountain in Massachusetts, and it's a massive, huge jump line.
Yeah.
And so it got me thinking, because when you said the floating ceiling, I said, how about no ceiling at all? Right?
Yeah, you did.
And I stick with that. I do believe that. But I think for us to really visualize, when we talked about visualization last week also, you were talking about when you were visualizing seeing yourself do it. And one of the comments that I said back to you was, you have to believe that you can do it. So if you don't know how to jump, and then you're trying to visualize yourself doing the Fort Hill jumps, that's not going to work. Like, you're not, like, part of you is just going to be like, no, dude, you're not doing that. Like, that's right. You don't even know how to jump yet. You got to clear this little tabletop first. And so in a sense, that floating ceiling is very realistic, and it's safe. It's keeping us from doing something that's, oh, well, I visualize this, so I'm just going to go ahead and try this. But at the same time, I think as you advance and your jumping gets better and better and better, and you're visualizing that Fort Hill jump line, and you're visualizing it, and your jumpings get better, and you're because you're working on it, you're putting the action into it, then all of a sudden that ceiling can be gone. And so you can go from someone that doesn't know how to jump, that's clearing Fort Hill. And maybe that'll be us someday. Maybe that'll be you someday.
Heck yes, absolutely.
Oh, I love the confidence. So, yeah. So I also wanted to touch on, we talk about visualizing on the bike, but that's something you can take to your life also. If you want to visualize abundance or a better job or, a new bike or anything, you can start putting that work in and feeling the emotion. And I've done that in my life, and I'm seeing results. Like, I'm seeing it happen.
Yeah.
And so I really kind of believe that we can make our own destiny. What do you think?
Man, well, I've been, I was fighting it. I was fighting it for a long time, Danny. But, given the circumstances that I was in, I thought, what, let me give this a shot. And I've been doing a lot of visualization. I've been doing a lot of journaling lately, and I got to tell you, there's something to this, man. There's something to this. I'm not ready to go full in yet, and I still want to do some more experimenting. But from what I've been seeing, it's been interesting, Danny. I just putting thoughts out there, positive thoughts, positive vibe, and something about putting it down on the paper, and just watching that come to life has been pretty awesome. So kudos to you for staying on me. And I'm curious to see where this is going to take us.
What's the best that could happen, right? If we're positive and we're writing down positive things, what's the best that can happen? I mean, really, what is the worst that can happen? Like, like the downside of living like this is that you're happy.
Yeah,
There's
right.
no
Yeah.
downside, you know, like,
no
oh,
downside. Yeah.
this isn't working and I'm completely happy. Well, you know what? Hey, you know what? It is working, dude. You know, like
Yes,
if it
yeah.
doesn't work, it still works. You know, like
That's right. That's right.
I don't know. I mean, I just love being a positive person and bringing that positivity and joy to everything that I do. And mountain biking is such a huge part of what I do. And I want to unlock everyone's potential. You want to unlock everyone's potential. We're stoked when we see people progress on the trails. You were stoked. You know, you talk about the Bamba beginner intro to mountain biking lessons.
Yeah.
And I had my kid out at the Phoenixville Bike Park a few weeks ago, and you know, just seeing people just do a little bit better and start to flow with the bike and that also flow in life. It's awesome. It's great. Riding
Yeah,
life,
man. Yeah, it really is, man.
You know, with the last podcast, I'm hesitant to go back and ask you another question because I know we want to get into our next subject, but you asked me a really good question and I answered it. But I didn't follow up and ask you. And the question was, how much does seeing your riding buddy do something motivate you to do it? And when I was listening back to the podcast, I was like, I kind of want to ask Sage that question also, because I'm curious what your answer would be.
You know, we have a really unique relationship where we know each other so well that I have 100% trust in your confidence in me. So if you do something and you turn around and you say, Sage, this is in your wheelhouse. You never push me. You never push me. But if you say, Sage, this is in your wheelhouse, that's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. And if I see you do it, I want to do it. And if I feel like it's something that is in my wheelhouse, I got that confidence going, I'm going for it too, man. It's just like, yeah, I'm 100% on board. You said the same thing in your reply. So there was really no reason for me to add to it because I felt the same exact way.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and edit out that question then. I apologize for wasting everybody's time. Everyone listening is like, oh, really? Really, Danny? We all know the answer. Well, I guess I meant it more in the general sense of if you see someone do something, how much do you want to do it? But yes, you and I do have that relationship, and it's nice to have that in a riding friend. We talk about that in the Stoked, you know, and increasing the Stoke video that we do, all about having more Stoke on your rides, every ride. And so when you see a friend do something and then they turn around and say that you can do it, sometimes that gives you just the extra confidence to just go and unlock your skills. We talk about that all the time, right? The skills are in there. You know, just a little bit of fear covering it up, and maybe it's just, okay, you know what? Unlock my skills and go with it and then get it. I don't think I can't remember a time when you turned around and said, you got this, that I didn't have it. I've crashed plenty of times, but I feel like I've always gone, it's been by myself or going first. You know, like I don't remember ever finishing a ride thinking like, damn, Sage got me hurt. You know, like it's, well, there was the one time there was one time.
I was going to say, yeah, the track record isn't first. Completely clean. That's right.
The one time it was I was on my hardtail and it was wet at Mt Penn, and Sage thought we could go and ride slabs. We were done the ride and we were heading back to the car, and to get back to the car, there's a couple downhills, and he said, why don't we do some slabs? And I was like, okay. Yeah. And I was the first one to go down this very steep slab that we call Sam Malone. The bike like totally lost traction and on the wet slab and slid out, and the wheel broke, and I ended up not really getting all that hurt. I was not happy.
Amazing.
But yeah, like definitely the universe was looking out for me on that one. And that one I was like, Sage, you're going first next time. And you know what? You would have done it fine.
Yeah, bad call on my part. My bad.
Well, we hinted at riding 5 days in a row. Are we that fit, Trail Sage, that we could ride 5 days in a row and not get tired? What could have possibly happened here? You want to get into it a little bit?
Well, first of all, we are fit enough to ride 5 days in a row.
Metabo.
But you're right. It was extraordinarily hot. I don't know that we would have been able to do 5 days in a row without this amazing experience. Both of us got demo e-bikes from Keswick Cycle and Paoli. And I got to tell you, mind blown. It was such an amazing experience, Danny.
Yes, I totally agree. So this is one of those situations where the universe just kind of provides and just go with the flow. Just see what happens. We're out for a ride probably about a month ago. My derailleur gets all snapped up with something on my relatively new bike. I'm like, oh, man. And, now I got to go to the shop. And so I go to the shop. And while I'm in there, conversation starts up about e-bikes. And I mention something. And they listen to the podcast.
Hey, now.
And Gary says to me, who's the manager, he says, would you guys, what size bikes are you? And then I tell him. And he says, we have demo e-bikes. Would you guys be interested in riding those? And you could talk about them on the podcast if you want. And I was like, yeah. So we just put that in our back pocket. And I thought we'd get them for a day. I thought we would get them for a day. And we were talking about going to this place called Trexler. It's got really good downhill trails, but the climbs are very exposed, gravelly, long, kind of boring climbs. They're not trail climbs. And I'm not a huge fan of the place. The downhill trails are great. There's some bike park worthy jumps and lines.
Yeah.
But the climb up is just brutal. And in the middle of the summer, it's exposed to the sun, and it's just no fun. So I thought, well, boy, if we can get these e-bikes and take them to Trexler and we could do laps at Trexler, that would be really fun. And it just so happened that July 4th weekend, and I picked them up to Wednesday to ride them on Thursday, and they said, you can keep them for the weekend. We don't need them back right away. And I don't know if that meant ride them all weekend, but to Sage and I, that was like, you could ride them every day.
Green light.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, once we got our feet wet on these things, we were like, oh my gosh, we have to ride every day. The hardest thing was just getting up every morning to get back to the trail. But then once we got on them, it was so much fun. So how do we want to approach this? I mean, we've never been on e-bikes before. We certainly had our preconceived notions of what e-bikes are and what they're good for. And we've been through the whole range from when they came out, which is a really long time ago, to where they are now. And at first I was anti, and then I saw some of my older friends who could continue to ride, and because they rode e-bikes, and then I really liked them. And I hadn't really thought about it for myself. I know they're expensive. And then we had this demo opportunity, and now we want them. So we've gone through the whole range of of the e-bike experience. Should we approach this from your what was your first impressions? And you made a Trail Sage video on that day at Trexler. So go to your YouTube channel on for Trail Sage, and you can see us riding them at Trexler. But you'll get Sage's whole first impression on. So Keswick Cycles in Paley is a specialized shop. They're a specialized factory shop. And so we demoed the Specialized Turbo Levos.
Yeah.
Right? And that's essentially the Evo, which is my analog bike. So it's got adjustable geometry. It has 3 different degrees or head angles you can do in the front, and in the back you can do high or low. I set them up because I knew we were going to practice jumping. I set them both up high in the back and as slack as possible on the front. And that's the way I have my Evo set up. So you get a little bit of clearance in the back for the rocks, but the front's really set up for jumping and high speed. And
it had the when you set it up slack in the front, that's a 63-degree head angle tube. So
63 and a half, I think.
Was it 63? Well, man, whatever it was really nice. Bike was really stable. And my goodness, it was such, and here's the thing, Danny, we didn't even realize on the first day that the bikes were set up mullet.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Yes.
So meaning that there's a 29-inch front tire and then a 27.5 in the back. And that also helps to rake out the bike because now you have a bigger front wheel. Your bike's going to be even more slack. And I think the biggest thing for me that I took away from that was the weight. Like I couldn't believe how heavy these bikes were. And I weighed mine. I came back and I put mine on the scale and it was over 50 pounds. So you definitely can feel it. You definitely can feel it. But I think that's.
And what's your Ibis weigh?
Ibis is sub 30. So this was, you could feel it. And
so you're looking at 20 to 25 pounds more somewhere around that range than your regular bike.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and also there's a little display screen on the top tube, which you could configure, which was really cool. I mean, we had it set up where you could see the trail mode that we were in. So there's 3 modes. It was the eco mode, the trail mode, and then turbo, which was just ridiculous. But you could see which mode you were in, and for us, we had the speed displayed on it, so you could see how fast you were going. But when I was talking to Corey at the shop, and the battery, that's right. That was huge to be able to see how much battery life you had left. We kept going back and forth like, hey, what's your battery at now? You know,
there was a little battery anxiety at first. It never really ended up being a problem. But when you first start riding these things and you realize and you feel how heavy they are, the last thing you want is to run out of battery and have to get back to the car.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You know, like that would have ruined the whole day. If I had to do one climb with no motor on that thing, that would have ruined the entire experience. So,
yes, it would. Yeah. Absolutely. And by the way, the battery life on these things is supposedly, I can't believe I'd said that word correctly, but supposedly 5 hours. Now we didn't even come close to that. Oh, was it? How do you say that word?
Supposedly? There's no B in supposedly. Supposedly.
There you go. Thank you. This
I didn't know that was a problem word for you.
It's always, you know what? I stay away from that word. I went for it today, failed. Yeah, total fail. Supposedly, the battery's supposed to last 5 hours. We didn't even come close to draining this thing. So I don't know if that's actually true. I did notice that if you're willing to put in a little bit of pedaling, you can get that eco mode to last quite a long time, which, was really surprising and awesome. I was not able to pair my bike. You were.
Yeah. The app was pretty cool. I only looked at it once, but you could set where you wanted eco mode to be and trail mode and turbo. You could set where you wanted them. So, you could make your trail mode almost as fast as your turbo mode. It was just all adjustable like that. Yeah. There was a shuttle mode that you could put in. So, I mean, you have the bike, which is the suspension and the wheels, and then you have the motor, and then you have the software. And I don't know how many different variations of these there are. It seems like there's quite a bit of variation and difference in the screen and the size of the motor and the power of the motor. And you can get lighter weight ones, but then you don't get as much power and you maybe not as much suspension. So there's a whole range of different things that we definitely would like to hear some feedback. Right, listeners, let us know. Do you have an e-bike? Do you want an e-bike? What do you think about e-bikes? Which e-bike do you have? Which e-bike are you looking at? What type of e-bike would you get? I feel like, and Sage, after our experience on the Turbo Levo, which is it's an enduro trail bike.
Yeah. Right? That's a good explanation.
It's right on the cusp of enduro and trail. But I think I would stick with the heavier bike, the stronger motor, and the more suspension. It was really fun to be able to put it in trail mode or to put it in turbo mode and just zip up things. I don't want a 130 travel e-bike. I want something that can do everything. If I'm going to put a motor in it, I want it to be able to do everything. I want it to be able to do the big jumps, the big slabs, go anywhere. But what do you think? Because we saw both. Now we're spotting e-bikes on the mountain, and we talked to other people with e-bikes, and Trexler was like half e-bikes. And then we're doing laps at Skyline and at Mt Penn, which we'll talk about later. And we're meeting other people that have e-bikes. We met Adam, who was riding an e-bike. And so other people that were out doing what we were doing, which we've never really just paid attention to. But going back to that question, would you go with the lighter, smaller engine, less capable bike, or the big engine, more travel?
Yeah, I would. There's actually a third option, and that is lighter engine, smaller. It's actually the same engine. It's the lighter, smaller battery.
Motor.
Yes. Motor. Oh, I'm sorry, motor. Yes, smaller. It's the same size motor, smaller battery, but same geo. I don't think that I was even close to maxing out that battery life on any of the days that we rode it. So, I think Specialized has the SL version, the super light. That's probably the version that I would get because I do want to use the e-bike for jumping and working on my downhills. I'm not interested in doing cross-country rides on it. I just didn't need all that battery power. We finished every day. I had 50+% battery life on it. But you and I are pretty fit. You and I are pretty fit people, so we're comfortable putting in the pedal strokes.
We used a lot of eco mode. We used a lot of the eco mode, and I was kind of tired after each day. If I had been in trail mode, I wouldn't have been tired at all. And it probably turns out I could have been in trail mode. I mean, you're using some body English to move the bikes around. Yeah.
Were you tired from the pedaling, or were you tired because moving these bikes in the air is really heavy?
I think I was just tired from getting up and riding 5 days in a row. The first day was the Phoenixville Bike Park. That was our last podcast. We talked about that. That was Wednesday.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday was e-bike, e-bike, e-bike. And then Sunday we went to the bike park to say, let's see how all this practice on the e-bikes translates to the bike park. And it turns out we were pretty tired. You especially were really tired by day 5.
I bumped.
So was it just being out riding? Was it moving the heavier bike around? Did you not realize? Because it's a different type of fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the days were really hot. So there was that also. And you're really bad at rehydrating. I actually think that was the biggest thing, is you probably got dehydrated. So it was a very unscientific study to say how tired did we get riding these e-bikes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think there's any way we're not doing those rides. Let's talk about, did I cut you off? Were you about to answer one of my questions? Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I was going to answer one of your questions, but the weight is significant. And this is all across any e-bike you get is going to be heavier than a regular bike. That's just obvious. You have a battery, you have a motor, and you and I noticed that right away. It was great for turning and feeling planted. But anytime you had to do a move, like let's say you had to step up or log over, or if you wanted to move the bike around, like flick the bike around, you felt every single pound of that bike. And my goodness, that alone wore me out. So my legs never felt tired, but my upper body was exhausted from trying to get this bike to do what I wanted to do. And I think you felt the same way.
Well, should we describe the rides that we were on? And then, because we had a very specific idea of what we wanted to use these e-bikes for. And then also had the weather that really was like, you're going to stick to that idea.
Yeah.
Thursday was the first day we had the e-bikes. We went to Trexler. It was a beautiful day. It was dry. And that was there. But Trexler doesn't have any tech. Trexler is really just flow and jump trails.
Right. Yeah.
And then we were like, oh, we got to take these to Skyline. And then we could do laps at Skyline. And then we also kind of wanted to see how they felt on the tech and maybe take them on a couple slabs. They're also demo bikes, and Gary's only request was that we didn't break them, which,
it's a pretty big ask.
That's a pretty, well, maybe you shouldn't give them to us then. Sage
that's right.
just got his bike back and, my face is still healing. So, he kind of looked at me sideways. He was like, just don't break them, have fun on them.
Right.
So, we very much had that in our mind that we are not going to take these on anything. We're not getting a scratch on them. We're not putting them down. We're not going to take them on anything that's anywhere, over our heads whatsoever. And then it rained overnight, both days that we went to Mt Penn. And so when we got there in the morning, it was wet and the rocks were really slippery. But what were your thoughts on riding the tech?
Danny, and this is really poignant because this is going to really explain, well, to myself, really just what I want to use the e-bike for. And the tech is not where I want to use the e-bike for one major reason. And that is the brakes are not connected to the motor. And the reason why that's a problem is when you and I are doing tech, especially slow speed tech, power modulation is incredibly important. And the minute that you start to crank that pedal around, the smallest input that you put into that pedal, the motor kicks in. And it's uncomfortable. So you can imagine if you're trying to do a precision move on the slow speed tech and all of a sudden not accidentally, but if you do a half crank or if you'd even just put a small input and suddenly the bike lunges forward, that's a problem. And I'm often riding my brakes through tech. And because the brake does not kill the motor, you have this weird feeling of this bike propelling you forward and you're trying to modulate the brakes. It made picking lines really difficult. Now, at the same token, on those like technical climbs, I didn't even have to pick a line. It was just like put it into trail mode and just blast up this thing. It didn't matter if you had a line or not. But, you know, for that slow speed tech, Danny, this is not I feel like this wasn't the bike for me. And again, we only had one day on the tech portion of it, so maybe you would get better at it. I think I would prefer the analog bike in those situations. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think pedaling through those situations is part of the fun and part of the challenge, but maybe you would get used to that. Maybe you would understand exactly how your bike responds and really start to be able to dial in that slow speed tech. But as far as what I know right now, I want to pedal through my tech, and especially anything that has high consequence. I want to be able to track stand and wait and line it up and then go when I'm ready, and not feel like the bike might lurch or lunge, as you said, in front of me. And at the same time, there's certain things like I'm thinking about third gate special, right? So slight, janky, rocky uphill, and then you go over the edge. Well, but what's so hard about that is getting up that slight jank to get to the edge. And if you're on the e-bike, you might just like kind of be able to smoothly fly over that.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? No way. No way.
Too fast.
No. Oh my gosh, Danny, yes, I agree that climb up to the ledge is hard, but can you imagine if you got to the ledge, you weren't ready, and you put a small,
and the bike's going anyway.
It's just, oh my gosh, that would be the worst. Yeah, no, 38 special is a no-no for me. Well, that would be a really good example
of why you don't want it on slow speed tech.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from listeners if anyone has any experience with this. RideandLaugh1 at Gmail, or comment in the YouTube. You know, let us know. You know, hey, no, I ride slow speed tech all the time, or I don't do it. You know, what are you using your e-bike for, or you know, and how is it working there? And I'm sure there's people that are doing everything on these bikes. I mean, I know I've seen pros on YouTube. I just watched a video with Remy and Jeff Gulovich, and they were riding e-bikes on a trail in British Columbia. That new Cambodia trail, and it was a sick video. And I mean, they're awesome. They're pro level, like they're pros. They're like top of the line riders. So, you know, but I don't know which bikes they were on, or how much you dial that in, or how much you get used to it. I'd be really curious to hear from that. So for our purposes, though, like you and I use downhill parks. We talk about this all the time, that we love riding tech. But when we go to downhill park, we almost exclusively ride the jump lines because we ride tech all the time. Yeah. So if we're going to get lift assist and be able to practice doing something over and over and over. Now, we don't go to the downhill park enough. If we went to downhill parks all the time, I would love to check out some of the tech trails at Mountain Creek. I think it'd be really fun. But that said, we want to practice the jumps. And so we go to downhill parks, we ride flow, and we ride jump lines, and we're practicing jumps all day. And so we had kind of locked in our minds, if we ever had e-bikes, then instead of a chairlift to the top of the bike park, we instead have a e-bike that's going to, you know, shuttle you to the top of the jump line. And so that was very much in mind. That's why we chose Trexler, and that's why we chose Skyline. And the section at Mt Penn of Skyline that we chose has a series of 5 jumps that are bike park size and quality jumps. And some of them get pretty big, and there's a return trail right next to it. And so we could session those 5 jumps and then take the return trail. And we've sessioned these jumps before on our analog bikes. How many laps do you think we would get on an analog bike before we would get tired and move on?
Probably like 10, maybe max.
Maybe max.
Maybe.
How many do you think we did on the e-bike?
Like 60. Like it was, I lost count. It was so.
I was going to say 45, but yeah, it might have been.
It was so easy. I like literally felt nothing. You know, we would finish the line, high five, and right back up in 20 seconds. It was unbelievable.
Didn't even pause at the top because there's no heavy breathing from having to do this small climb, but still a climb. Didn't have to worry about getting into a different gear or anything like that. I mean, at first I was doing eco mode, and then on day 2, I just put it in trail mode, and I left it in trail mode because it didn't matter. Once I started pedaling and got into the downhill, then the weight of the bike took over and the jump line took over, and you didn't need to pedal anymore. And then you could just pedal right back up and just go. The only reason you would stop was to get a drink of water or just to like kind of collect yourself. But it was just lap after lap after lap after lap. And you have not ridden a bike other than your Ibis. You hadn't ridden something that was this slack with this much travel ever. So you're getting that experience for the first time, and you're getting the e-bike experience for the first time. And we ride Trexler. You did great. You cleared a whole bunch of things on there's Jack of Diamonds. Is that what it's called?
That's right. Yeah, Jack of Diamonds. Yep.
Okay, Jack of Diamonds. That didn't sound right for some reason. The Jack of Diamonds trail, and then check out the Trail Stage video on first impressions for the Levo. You'll see the whole thing. We do this Brian's Trail or Brian's Return, Brian's Run. What was it called?
Return of Brian's.
The Return of Brian. I mean, come on. I could have named it. I mean, honestly, Trail Builders, if you need to name it. I said everything but the Return of Brian. The Return of Brian? Is that what it's called?
Brian's Return.
Oh, Brian's Return.
No,
wait, Brian Strikes Back?
No. Now you got me screwed up. No, I think it's the Return of Brian's. Oh, now you got me all screwed up.
No, there's definitely not more than one Brian. Brian's Unite. I think it's called Brian's Unite Return. Right? Oh, man. This is going to take a simple Google search. I'm not even, listeners, don't tell us what it is. We're going to figure it out on Trailforks.
Yeah. Watch the video.
Anyways, it's got smaller tables. You cleared everything pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then we went to Jack of Diamonds, and you cleared all the tables on the top portion. And then on the bottom portion, you cleared everything, all of them but the really big ones at the bottom.
The last 3.
I think.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing. And then I started to get really close to clearing the big ones at the bottom. I think if we had stayed for another 30 or 40 minutes, I was like probably ready to send them. Definitely after the next 2 days at Mt Penn, if we had gone back, I was ready to send them. They have to clear them, you have to hit like the extra, there's the jump, and then there's like the bonus lip. Anyone that's been to jump parks knows sometimes they have the extra steep section. And to hit these, it really sends in the air. And so to clear the last 2 jumps on Jack of Diamonds at the bottom, you have to hit that lippy section. And I just wasn't. You're going so fast, and I just wasn't quite comfortable with it. But getting close. So we have this great day at Trexler. We're like, oh my gosh, we got to take it to Mt Penn. We got to see what it rides like on our home trails. And when we get there, you recognize some people there from the fire team.
Yeah, we ran into Emma and her dad, Dave.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And so, Dave's there, and a bunch of the kids and some of the fire girls, and they're all practicing, and they're being coached by this young man named Chris.
Yes.
Who gives you some advice as well. So the universe provided you not just an e-bike, not just a modern geometry bike, but a coach. And tell us what happened day 2 of the e-bike at Mt Penn on Skyline Trail.
Danny, I was wondering when you were going to get to this. It was like you were burying the lead. This is the lead, baby. I cleared every jump on Skyline, which has never happened. I've never gotten past number 1. It was unbelievable.
It was like epic. Listeners, it was epic. This dude could not clear the second jump to save his life. He was pulling up with his pedals on the first jump, which is like the intro to mountain biking tabletop jump. And and within like 15 minutes, you had cleared the first 2.
Yeah.
And Chris gave you some tips on how to clear number 3, which is on a little bit of a curve. It's very rampy. It's got a little bit of a curve in it. So that's the one that trips everybody up. Anytime I struggle with those jumps, it's always number 3. I get 1 and 2, and then I get scared on 3.
Yeah.
But you totally unlocked it that day, and you were flying. I mean, and just lap after lap after lap. what was happening in your head? What was happening? What unlocked it? To explain this amazing phenomenon?
First of all, massive kudos to Chris. That's Shelly's son. He saw that I was struggling on number 3. And the reason why number 3 is so difficult is, first of all, it's way steeper than the first 2. It's short, but it's on a turn. And so visually, it gets really like, it just starts to mess with your head. And I'm struggling. He's watching me case this thing time after time. And I'm like, Chris, what's the secret? And he's like, just hit it straight. Pretend it's not turning and just hit it straight. And I was like, what? I was like, but aren't you going to land like all weird? Because the backside is definitely like off camber to the right. And he's like, no, just hit it straight as if it was a straight on jump. And that was it. I just let it fly. And once I cleared it, that was it. That unlocked the rest of the jumps. The rest of the day was just high fives and smiles. And I got to tell you, like, total trail angel, you know, like I would have probably struggled with that, you know, over and over and over. And I now know why you and Stick enjoy jumping so much, because my cheeks hurt. I was smiling so much. Yeah.
It's so much fun. And I just got to point out to everybody that if you go back and listen to, I don't know if it was episode 3, 4, or 5, but it was one of our first episodes. It was a few months ago. And I challenged Sage. I said, maybe you write it down. Maybe you write it down. Maybe you put it in your journal that you're good at mountain biking and you're good at jumping your bike on a mountain bike, and it's going to happen. And we made a joke that if it did happen, we were going to make Ride and Laugh gratitude journals. Remember?
Yeah. That's
we
right.
made the joke and then, well, if this happens, like that would be amazing, because like we just couldn't, you know, we believed it, but it seemed so far away.
Yeah.
And then here we are just a few months later, and you are sailing over bike park style jumps with ease and confidence, and by the next day, everyone, he was throwing in bar turns. he's like, oh, you know, now I need something to do while I'm up here in the air. You know, I mean, just last week I was joking about you having dinner on the top of tabletops because you cased them so much. You spent so much time on the top of those tabletops that they were like, you know, you're not actually supposed to eat on these. These aren't real tables. And then here you are, you're sailing over them. I was behind you and your speed was perfect. Your form looked great. I mean, and just seeing you pop off those jumps and hit the landing and go back, and just the smile on your face, like, and I was totally confident riding behind you. It wasn't like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. This is the wrong speed. He's going to mess me up. Like, no, you were awesome. And so just to see this happen, it was just so cool that this all came together. The e-bikes, Chris being there, us having access to an awesome place like Mt Penn, and thank you to everyone that maintains those trails and works on those trails. Like, but you know, it all came together, and your manifestation, your visualization of clearing jumps, it happened. Like you know how to jump now, and I do want to get into this a little bit, that the bikes are different than the analog bikes. But I do, before that, like, I just want us to marinate in the success and the progression and the victory of Trail Sage jumping his mountain bike. I'm a jumper. Yeah.
I'm a jumper. Yeah.
I mean, come on. This is awesome. This is so cool. I love it so much.
You know what? You had mentioned, just to kind of bring this back to the e-bikes, you had mentioned bike parks. And I got to tell you, this doesn't happen at a bike park. And the reason why is the bike park has the lift. You know, so you're especially at a Blue Mountain, right? You're sitting on the lift for like 10 minutes. And then you get to the trail and it's not jump after jump. You know, being able to session Skyline, it's literally 5 jumps right in a row, and to climb back up is 20 seconds. That's not an exaggeration. That is exactly what it is. So being able to immediately, on an e-bike. So being able to immediately correct, that's right, in trail mode, being able to immediately correct any kind of mistake, or, oh man, I just want to send this a little bit far, a little less brake. You can immediately apply that. That was absolutely clutch. That doesn't happen without an e-bike, because there is no cooling off. It was just immediate, and I think that you were experiencing that too, because I was trying to get you to work on the bark turn too, and you started working that in. You were like, oh, okay, on this jump, let me try and get a wiggle, I think you were calling it.
It was a squiggle, I called it. Yes, my bar turn was just a squiggle. So the bike just squiggles in the air a little bit. It just kind of goes to the side, back and forth a little bit, but yeah, I mean, there's, we were in the air long enough that it was like, oh, maybe I could do something while I'm up here. And that had never really occurred to me before. But to your point, to be able to practice the same 5 jumps. So, okay, this jump, I know I don't need to squeeze the brake. This one, I'm going to feather a little bit. This one, I'm just going to send it. This one I feather, and this one I send. Like you start to like learn these, okay, this is, and then your confidence just like really starts to increase. And we talk about this so much, is just that practice of being able to do something like this, to be able to practice jumping over and over and over. What else about the e-bike made you confident?
That's a really tough question to answer. And one of the experiments that I wanted to do was I wanted to take my Ibis on the same day, on that day 2, and be able to ride the Ibis right after I ride the e-bike. That would have answered a lot of questions. That would have answered this specific question that you're asking me, because the Ibis doesn't have the same geometry and it's a lot lighter. And those are the 2 things that I can't put a finger on it. Like if the e-bike's weight, if the e-bike's geometry had an effect. And I'm not sure that I can answer that question, Danny. We went to the bike park the next day. I did not do well, but I don't think that was the bike. I think that was me. I was literally like baking in the sun and fatigued. I was not hydrated and I just had a really rough day. So I don't know that that was a good gauge in terms of what I had learned.
Well, I understand that. And I thought that idea of we did bring the Ibis, and we were going to park right at the top of where those jumps were. We saw someone else park there the day before, and I thought it was a great idea. And we went there, and for whatever reason, the gate was closed and wasn't meant to be. And so we just didn't park there. But I thought that the weight of the e-bike really made the bike feel very planted. When I picked it up from the shop, they said, oh, they're heavy, but they're actually really fun to jump. And I thought that seemed a little counterintuitive. I was like, oh, it weighs more, but it's fun to jump. And, and I'm thinking like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. And lo and behold, the weight just being right in the center, we talk about this all the time, is staying centered. That's like one of my main phrases that I say to myself all the time, is stay centered. And I was still saying that even on the e-bike. I was still saying that because it still makes a huge difference. I still weigh a lot more than the bike. But when you have the motor and the battery, but especially the motor, like in that bottom bracket, it really does center the bike. The weight is in the center, and the bike felt very planted and very balanced. And I like having that extra suspension. That's another reason I would want more suspension in an e-bike if I were to buy one. I like having that extra suspension for the heavier bike. And it really just took off very balanced. It was very planted. It really stayed on line wherever you pointed it, because it's so heavy. Oh, yeah. Wherever you pointed it is where it went. You didn't get knocked offline by a little rock or something like that. This thing's just like tanking through. And so I just felt like it gave us a lot of confidence. And then for me, I thought that the cornering of the bike, especially on berms, something that I kind of struggle with is trusting in berms. And practicing the berms on the e-bike for 3 days and then going to the bike park, I've never cornered so well at the bike park as I did that day at Blue Mountain. Yeah. I mean, I started to trust my Evo at Blue Mountain, and there was an adjustment period going back to the analog bike, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the adjustment period. I mean, it took me like 4 or 5 runs to like get used to my regular bike again. Yeah. But I did get back there. And then I was riding that regular bike, I think, better than I have in maybe ever.
You were on fire, man. You were on fire. You were right on my rear end. And I was like, who is this guy? But so was I. To go back to your original question about the weight, and you're right, super planted. You know what? I think I do notice the weight in a good way. And now I remember I feather my brakes. And with that added weight, when you feather the brakes in the analog bike, you definitely don't have enough speed to clear the jump. With the e-bike, because it was so heavy,
Yes.
I immediately picked up speed again. And gosh, if you could easily just put one pedal stroke and you're really back up to speed. So
a half
you're
crank
right.
and you're right back up to speed. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. The weight did make a difference. So I did notice that. You're absolutely correct. So just a small correction there.
All right. So the drawbacks, I guess, would be the weight. If you need to hike the bike, though, I know some of these e-bikes, the ones that we rode, do have like a walking mode, which is pretty cool. Like, so if you have to hike the bike, then it has a walking mode. I am curious how they do in some of the burlier tech. If I were to have one of these in Phoenix, like on South Mountain, on some of those real techie uphills, like how do they do? I think it would still be pretty fun, and then you could get a lot. There's off South Mountain. There's so many cool downhills. You pointed that out. That
man,
if you had an e-bike, you could session some of those downhills, and a lot of the climbs just kind of suck. Battery anxiety, I didn't really feel. There's the cost of it, right? It seems like
the biggest. Yeah,
the cost now is. I saw anywhere from $3,500 to really like $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, $11,000. I would say there was a lot in the $8,000 category. Specialized had some stuff on sale, and some other companies. Here's my question to you: if the universe gave you $8,000 today and said, "Go buy a bike," are you buying an e-bike or are you buying a new analog bike?
Nope. Yeah, I'm sold. I am 100% sold. Yeah.
You're buying an e-bike before a new analog bike.
Yeah.
You'd keep the Ibis and get an e-bike.
I'd keep the Ibis and I would get the Ibis. Yeah, because the Ibis is an
heard it
all
here
around.
first, folks. Heard it here first.
The Ibis is a great all around bike, and now that it's repaired, it does everything that I need it to do. And when I want to train my fitness, I have my road bike, and I can do hit rides and I can do hit workouts and work on the one thing I'm missing is the ability to train downhills. And I don't make a lot of money, so I can't afford buying lift tickets all the time. Yet. So, but I can't afford even the distance, really. I mean, Blue's pretty close, but that's still an hour and a half, and Mountain Creek is 2.5. To be able to
we don't live near
so to be able to have an e-bike where I can work on a downhill on a local trail, stop it. It's a no-brainer for me. I am 100% sold. Yeah. I mean, what about you? What would you do?
Oh, well, I have good analog bikes. I mean, I have a new analog bike. I mean, I would. I totally want an e-bike. We also have to say that like we parked at our regular spot at Mt Penn, and we did our regular climb up, which is usually what is that? Usually like 30 minutes and 700 feet, right?
It's
of technical
550
climbing
to the top. Yeah, 550 to the top, and it's usually a bear. And it's right at the beginning of the ride, and we're like, not this time.
So we
took
those e-bikes out, and we just like flew up the hill, and the grins on our face we must have looked like the Joker and the Joker. Brian and the Return of Brian.
That's right.
Brian Strikes Back. Yeah, I mean,
Brian Strikes Back.
We just had these huge, dumb grins on our face. We were just giggling. Like, oh my God, like we've done this climb so many times. And you know what? The next time we do it on an analog bike, it's going to be like, I mean, I'm not going to switch to e-bikes. I don't want to switch to e-bikes. I still want to be a primarily analog bike guy. I like the fitness. Sure. I love mountain biking, regular mountain biking. I just think the e-bike is a really cool arrow to have in the quiver. It just and it was really fun, and you could ride it on tired days. You could do it as a recovery ride. There's so many ways to use it. Listeners, let us know. Do you have an e-bike? How do you use it? Is it a recovery ride machine for you? Is it downhill practice laps for you? Give us some feedback and give us some insight into e-bike riders and how much do you ride it versus your analog bike? Ride and Laugh One at Gmail or comment on the YouTube. Please.
You mentioned recovery rides, but it also works for coming back from an injury. I mean, we know Colby Barth, he's coming back from a serious injury, You know,
which is awesome. Yeah.
He's riding an e-bike and it's getting him back into shape. Our buddy John Pacharis, you know, he's got a bum knee. He's able to now ride with his kids because he has an e-bike, you know, so it helps in that sense as well. And you and I, we always, before we got to test these demo bikes, we had always talked about extending our bike life by getting e-bikes. You know, when we get to that point where our fitness starts to drop.
We saw Dane and Fred riding e-bikes.
Exactly. Yeah. And I can't wait to get to that point where it's like, yeah, you know, I'll still be able to get more mileage out of my body by just going with an e-bike. You know, I'll still be able to enjoy all the things that I currently enjoy. So yeah, those are 3 pretty good reasons, different reasons to get an e-bike.
How tempting is it to just ride the e-bike and not get into the pain cave, not suffer on the analog bike anymore? I mean, is that the concern, Sage and listeners? You know, is that the concern that if we have an e-bike, we're not going to go out and suffer on our analog bikes?
I know that happens. We have met several riders that have gotten sucked into that. They're like, yeah, I don't even ride my analog bike anymore. I would really highly doubt that would happen to me because of how much I love the fitness part of it. I love the pain. I really do. It's kind of a sickness, I guess, but there's just something about that. And there's also something about accomplishing things that are really tough on that analog bike that just adds a flair for me. I would be very dedicated in how I would use that e-bike. I just know me well enough to know that this would not take the place. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. I see some of the YouTube riders that I really like, and some of them have e-bikes and they also ride their analog bikes. And I've seen also some of those guys that have seemed like they just switched over to the e-bike. But for us, like, we're kind of steeped into the world of feeling good and being fit. And for me, part of mountain biking is climbing and getting through slow speed tech and getting through long rides. And if we're doing a road trip, we're not bringing e-bikes and then bring them into the hotel to charge them every night. Like, if we're doing a road trip for 4 or 5 days, like, we will ride our bikes for 4 or 5 days and we will pedal up to the top. Right?
It depends on where we're riding. You know, if it's Virginia, I'm bringing the e-bike. Yeah. Those
Brian strikes back again.
Yeah. I'm just saying, man, we haven't been back to Virginia for one reason, and that is those ridiculous road and fire road climbs.
All right.
You know,
depending where we're going. Yes. I guess there could be an e-bike trip. Certainly, if we're going to Canoga, like one of these places where, you know, you have to ride back up to the top, and but then you get, you know, like, then I probably would want to bring an e-bike. So we're gonna need a bigger van. You're gonna have to buy a bigger van. Okay.
That's right.
So, man, we could talk about this. There's so much more to get into here. I mean, we just talked briefly about you unlocking jumps. We didn't really talk about the day at Blue Mountain Bike Park all that much. So and we saw Keaton when we were there. So that was really cool. Keaton is Sean's nephew, I think. But he helped Sean from Sticks and Stones Trail Company, which is the awesome company that built my pump track. And Keaton is his assistant, who is just a really nice young man. And he had contacted us a couple times and asked if we were going to Blue. So we reached out. We're like, hey, we're going to be at Blue. He said he was going to be there. We met him for a couple of runs, and the dude was just like skying off of every jump and just casually whipping and having a great time. So that was cool riding with him.
Can I just do a little shout out to Keaton, because I got a flat and he has a season pass at Blue Mountain, and so he gets a discount. He totally used his discount to help me with my flat tire. Like, he literally,
he's awesome.
He was like, no, let me pay for, let me get in there and help you out here. Like, he chased me down and he was like, no, Sage, let me do this for you. So, like, what a stand-up dude. Like,
he's really sweet.
Thank you, Keaton. That was really awesome.
Yeah. He's an awesome rider and he's a really, really good dude, really good young person.
Yeah.
So that said, we could do a lot more on e-bikes. Really curious what our feedback is going to be. So shoot us questions. We are kind of on the hunt for e-bikes. I don't think there's anything urgent about us getting them.
You're on the hunt, not me.
I mean, I think having e-bikes would be really fun. I think it would add a lot to our mountain bike experience. So yeah, I'm really curious about the whole how we're going to procure e-bikes or how this is going to happen, or if we want to do that. I don't want one if you don't have one. I don't, you know, if I'm not going to ride an e-bike while you're not riding
Tow
one.
me
I know
up.
you could
Yeah.
tow, but I don't think the towing for around here, towing someone is not really reasonable on the trails that we have here. I mean, if you're on the West Coast and you're going up a fire road, then maybe the tow makes sense. But here we're like running laps, so there's just no way that for what we want to use it for. There's just, and at Trexler, it wouldn't really work either, right? Like it just doesn't really work. It's too much single track. Yeah. So we need e-bikes.
You need to buy one, get one. Yes, buy one, get one.
Buy one, get one. That means Dan buys two and gives you one. I don't know. I have to talk to the missus about that. All right. So much to be grateful for. What are you choosing this week as your mountain bike gratitude of the week?
Well, I'm going to leave the gratitude that I think you're going to have off the table for myself. I will pick something else because I think I know what you're going to say. And if you don't say it, then I'm going to have to retract mine and re-record my gratitude. But I am going to go with Dirt Sculpt for creating this awesome A-line jump line. I said A-line, it's Skyline. It'll always be A-line to me, but it's actually called Skyline. And the reason why I want to pull it out is because...
And Trexler.
And Trexler, but specifically Skyline, because... Oh, they did build Trexler. That's right.
Yeah,
they did. But
I think they did.
The Skyline, but the Skyline Trail, as you had said, it had rained. Both days, the night before it rained, they built this thing so well, there was not a single puddle. It was solid. It was safe. We weren't leaving marks. I am just, and then to clear it and just, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for that line being there. And for Bamba making that happen. Because I know Bamba sunk a lot of money into making that happen. But yes, thank you, Dirt Sculpt, for making such an awesome jump line that I totally took advantage of, and I'm still smiling about it.
Yes, and may I say that you are unlimited and anything is possible. And this is just further proof. The proof is out there. If we look, the proof is out there. Everything works out for us. You put it out there. You wanted to clear jumps. You're good at jumping mountain bikes, and it's happening. It's happening, and it's going to keep happening. It may not happen the way that you think it's going to happen. It may not be linear. We put it out there, and then we let it go, and then just kind of watch how it manifests. Let me see how everything's going to work out for me in this one. And so you want a new full suspension bike, you want a new e-bike, just put it out there and just kind of see how it's going to manifest. Okay. Write it down. Write it down.
I'm writing it down right now. I'm writing it right down. E-bike, first stage. I mean, absolutely.
If it only took 2 months to manifest jumping, I mean, when are we getting these e-bikes? I feel like we might have them next week.
Hey, I'm there. Sold.
Yes. Well, I'm not putting a timeline on it, but anything is possible, and we are unlimited. So we're more powerful than we realize. Sage is jumping mountain bikes. Anything is possible. It's awesome. My mountain bike gratitude of the week, as Sage, you certainly could have used it. I had a backup one as well, but we have to go with the wonderful people at Keswick Cycles in Paoli who made this demo work. Thank you to all the staff and all the awesome people, Gary and Will and Corey and everyone else that works there that made these demos work, set these bikes up, and Specialized as well for providing the bikes and having demos and having a policy of getting riders out onto bikes. They said we could demo them again when we want to. So, which I'm totally open to. We had a hard time giving them back. They were just really, really fun. That Specialized Levo, Turbo Levo, we haven't ridden anything else, but I would buy that bike in a heartbeat. I mean, that bike was so much fun. It did everything I wanted it to do. And more. I just had no idea how much fun they would be. But the people at Keswick Cycles in Paoli, and there's 3 shops. There's also, I think, Glenside and Philadelphia, but they just do an awesome job. They're a specialized shop, and they get it. They're mountain bikers, and they've always been a really good shop to me. And this is just another example of them coming through in a big way and making an absolutely awesome weekend of riding. And so absolutely gratitude and thank you to Keswick Cycles of Paoli.
Yes, I will second that as well. I kept my bike because, as you said, I'm doing a video, and I called Corey with a couple questions that I had to do the video, and just super, super nice guy. Just, I can't say enough
really
about that
talented
shop.
mechanic. Yeah, Corey's an awesome
super
mechanic.
talented.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. Yeah.
Yep. My mountain bike tip, and this is a good one, man.
Buy an e-bike. That's your tip. If you don't want to pedal, they make bikes that have motors now.
That's right.
Hey, everybody.
Good night, folks.
Yep.
My mountain bike tip, and this was really, man, it was so hot, Danny, the last 5 days. And one of the things that happens in the heat is gnats. And these gnats, I don't know if this is an East Coast thing or whatever, but my goodness, I must have eaten at least 5 and 8 flew into my eye. The tip that I have is, if you're going to use bug spray, and we use a natural extract, I use a vanilla extract, which works okay for me. But if you're using any kind of a bug spray, do not spray it onto your skin, because when you sweat, it just washes away. If you're going to apply the bug spray, apply it to your helmet, apply it to your jersey, and if you have a hydration pack, apply it to your hydration pack. That'll make it last longer. I don't know how effective your bug spray is, but it will make it last longer because it won't get washed off from all the sweat. So that is my mountain bike tip.
Yes, and that's a great tip, and that I do that as well. You have laughed at me because I sprayed my knees one time, and you're like, "What? Who cares if there's bugs by your knees?" when you're as lanky as I am, those knees go flying all over the place. I mean, you never know where they might end up.
You get low, you get real low. Your knees are pretty close to your face.
I'm kneeing myself in the face sometimes by mistake. Getting bugs in all over the place. So, and I would say don't use the harsh chemical bug repellent. Don't use the DEET. And there's another one that's begins with a P. That's kind of strong. Use the vanilla. We've used cedar in the past. I mean, you smell a little bit like an old closet, but they work. They work until they kind of like sweat off or wear off. But so it does help a little bit. It does help a little bit. So
yeah, we'll leave a link to the ones that we use down below.
Yes. Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. So check the link in the YouTube channel. So everybody, please remember to throw us a comment about e-bikes or how you're using them or which one you have, which one you want, what you recommend.
Oh yeah.
Really, really curious to see what the feedback is on this one. And anything that we missed, we only rode them for 3 days. How do you use your e-bike? RideandLaugh1@gmail.com or in the YouTube comments. And if you decide not to comment, if you just are listening and you like to listen, that's fine too. We appreciate you. We would very much appreciate it. Everyone could leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast player you're using. So if it's Spotify or iTunes, especially, those are the big ones. Please leave us a 5-star review. That makes a really big difference on how many people we're exposed to and spreads the joy of Ride and Laugh podcast and the joy of mountain biking and more people getting excited, more people being positive about their lives and about riding. So go ahead and rate and subscribe on YouTube, on your podcast player, set us to auto download, and leave us a comment if you're interested. If you're still listening, you love riding bikes. We love riding bikes. We appreciate you. Now, get out. Have a great week. Ride and laugh, everybody.
I'll see you, everyone.